I'm here because I am a roaring lion crying out righteousness. We're continuing our teaching subject matter of Ask Solomon. There are several things that are going on here. Number one is that you need a good counselor. So if you don't want me, which some of you have already said, well, we reject you, Manning. Not everybody. But Ask Solomon is the way we want to approach where we're going, all right? So you want to ask Solomon some questions, and I'm going to outline what those questions are today. But this is day 35 of our reading Proverbs chapter 3, verses 1 through 10. So we got another 5 days. Probably by next Monday, we'll pick up starting in a different segment. But day 35, we've been doing pretty good, right? 35 days of reading Proverbs chapter 3, which I'm sure has enriched your life. It has enriched mine. But the subject matter today is Ask Solomon Part 2, because we've already done Ask Solomon Part 1. Is that right? Okay. Now, the basic things that we're going to ask Solomon is how to respond to what Pastor Manning has said by increasing our lives by 20% above where we are at present. In terms of where we were on this day last year, how can we be 20% better today than we were on this day last year, a year ago? So how do you do that? Ask Solomon. Very simple. Ask Solomon, the wisest, richest man that ever lived. Ask Solomon. So we get started with that in terms of how as question, one of the questions you want to ask. Let me say this too, by the way. In asking Solomon, here's what I've asked him, and here's what I've asked the Lord, quite frankly. And here's what I want to say to you. Many of you are probably really considering what I've said about increasing your life, upgrading your life, no matter how old or young you are. You can upgrade your life by 20%, thusly can enjoy more life. By the way, a large number you have not sent to the ATLAH feedback at atlah.org. You've not sent me your vacation plans, your 5-year vacation plans. Remember, I told you you're created to live and not die. So one of the ways that stimulates life in you, even if you're sick, but it will stimulate life, and it will stimulate enthusiasm and excitement in your life, is to plan your life for the next 5 years of vacation. Don't plan to go to jail. I told you, stop looking at the grave and start looking at towards the stars. Now, I've had one person who stated she's going to come forward now and design T-shirts and mugs, coffee mugs, and I don't know, a whole lot of things that with that phrase on it. You were created to live and not die. Stop looking at the grave and start looking at stars. All right. So now, so one of the things that you want to be able to do in terms of, increasing your life by 20% is that you might want to not focus on doing a whole lot of things at a 20% rate, but you might want to focus on doing just one thing. Now, the one thing, just to give an example, there are a lot of things I can, consider better preaching, which is definitely something I need to do. Better teaching, which is something by 20% better. I need to get better at that, and I'm trying. And, a better leader, better management. Since I'm a pastor and a leader and a manager and an administrator, I want to get better at that. But the one thing I want to focus on is I want to focus on getting better, and I do this reluctantly, by the way. I want to focus on getting better at using computer. I don't like computers. Let's just get straight about be straight about what we can be straight about. Let's be clear about what we can be clear about. I don't like computers. I don't. And so I don't find them exciting like a lot of people do. A lot of people stay on computers day in and day. I don't like them, and so I haven't learned to use them. But I've made a commitment reluctantly, since I've asked y'all to do something. I've reluctantly said, well, I'm going to try to get a little bit, 20% better at how to operate a computer. Computers. I don't even call them iPhones. It's not even, whatever you want to call them. iPhones, iPads, computers, whatever, right? I'm going to try to get better. And for me, that's saying a lot. Trust me, that is saying a whole mouthful. But, respectively, I'd also like to get better at a couple other things. Better preaching, better teaching, better administration. I'm going to try to get that too. All right. So ask Solomon. Ask Solomon. One of the things that you might want to do in asking Solomon also is how to focus on living and not dying. And if you ask him, here's what he's going to say. Today we're going to be in Proverbs chapter 3. We're going to be focusing on verse 9 and 10 in particular, but I want to be able to give you a generalization. The engineer is going to bring up verse 9 and 10 in just a moment. There you go. Thank you, Mr. Engineer. But I want to give you a generalization since we've been reading Proverbs now for the past, 35 days. You already know this, that verse 1 says, my son, forget not my law. Now that is a general introduction. And then we're going to go through, but today we're going to be looking at verse 9 and 10, but we're going to go through. I'm going to ask the engineer to bring us up in a moment, in just a moment, and you can hold tight for just a moment, but I'm going to read the entire 10 verses in just a moment, all right? But you want to ask Solomon how to focus on living a better, greater, more productive life. And here's what he would say, my son, forget not my law. So those are the questions, and let me just read out the questions before I bring up the text. Can I do that? Here's some questions I've written down that I want you to, I'll try to read them slow enough so you can write them down as well, because I think it's important that you write these questions down. You want to ask Solomon how to focus on living a blessed, a fruitful, a prosperous, a life that gives glory to Almighty God. You want to ask Solomon, how do I do that? How do I do that? Now, here are some subtopics. And Solomon will start with, my son, forget not my law. But here are some subtopics. You want to ask Solomon, how do I become a leader? Now, that might not be something that everybody wants to focus on, but for me, that's very important. How do I become a leader? And one of the things I want to say to all men that are listening to me, who have not come to unite themselves and submit themselves to my leadership, is that if you want to be a good leader, then you need to choose a strong leader. I don't know how some of you men sit up in a church with a sissified pastor. I don't know how y'all do that. I mean, I just don't know how you sit up on a sissified man. I don't know, and I probably would have problems sitting up under, the pastor of a woman. I mean, if women can definitely, but I would probably have problems. But what I surely would have problem with is sitting up on a sissified, and not a man that's prissy, with a broken wrist. I'm not talking about that, but one who's not really a leader. He's always smiling and everything, and always trying to make everybody happy, and really never takes any strong position. He just sticks his finger in the wind, which way the wind blows, and people push him around, members push him around, talk about him, talk about his wife, talk about his children with impunity. I don't know how y'all do that. So you would ask Solomon, how do I become a great leader? And by the way, I'm tooting my own horn now, to be sure. But if you submit yourself to me, you're going to be a good leader. I'm going to teach you how to be strong. Now, you come and you want to fight me, well, you're going to lose, and you still ain't going to be a leader. That's question number 2. Question number 3, and I'm going to answer all these. I wrote, so question number 1 is how to focus on living a blessed and a mighty, prosperous life before Almighty God. Number 2 is how to focus on how to become a good leader. Number 3, how to get an assignment from God. And this is very important. Listen to this. Check this out. You want to ask the Lord to give you an assignment. That's mighty. That's something. Boy, that is really, this is a lesson of lessons. Ask the Lord to give you an assignment. Now, if you ask Solomon, right? If you ask Solomon to say, Solomon, how do I ask the Lord to give me an assignment? Well, here's what Solomon said. When the Lord came to him, here's what Solomon said. Here's the assignment I want. He said, I want to be just like my father David. That's his assignment. I'm telling you. 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 5. He says, I want the assignment, I want to be just like my father David. I want to be just like my father David. That was the assignment. And you want to ask the Lord for an assignment. Now here's some cautions that God's going to need to trust you. The Lord's going to need to trust you before he gives you an assignment. He's not going to give an assignment to a quitter. I can tell you that right now. If you got a quitting spirit, a weak spirit, sissified spirit, angry spirit, rebellious spirit, disobedient spirit of a thief, he's not going to give you an assignment. But you want an assignment from the Lord. You want to step up in the world. He gave me ATLAH. You said, Pastor Manning, I do like you and everything. I think you're a mighty fine teacher and everything. But sometimes you just go over the top. Well, all right, I don't, but listen. I'm going to tell you something. Now, you can say what you want and do what you will and, but I believe the assignment Almighty God's given to me second only to, I will be third. And I really, really mean this. I mean, he gave Moses a major assignment. Moses had a major assignment. He gave Peter a major assignment. He gave Paul a major assignment. Okay, so I'll take assignment number 4. I really and truly believe, and if you categorize the assignment that God's given to me, then I'm number 2, and Moses is number 1. Now you can say, Pastor Manning, you done gone over the top. I ain't gonna stop listening to you though, because I know you're a good man. But you done gone over the top talking about the assignment that you got from as ATLAH is equal to the assignment that God gave to Moses. Well, what are you finding wrong about that? And when you ask the Lord for an assignment, obviously he's got to trust you. Obviously, right? He got to trust you. So you want leadership, and you need to be a leader. God's not going to give it. If you have not proven yourself to be a leader, if you've not proven yourself, you say, Pastor Man, you're talking a whole lot about yourself today. What's wrong with you? Okay, all right, so you're going to criticize me. I proved myself to be a leader in prison. That's why I did. I did. You heard me talk about the recent death of the Right Reverend Richard Stauffer. I led the class. I sparred against the Muslims. I became a leader. I was a leader prior to that. But God's not going to give an assignment to someone who's not a leader. So you would ask the Lord, you would ask Solomon, how do I get an assignment from the Lord? If you really want one, well, one of the things that he may tell you to do, and I pray that he would, is tell you, go and submit yourself to Pastor Manning. Go and submit yourself to Pastor Manning. That's your assignment. All right, but in terms of getting an assignment, you really need to the Lord needs to trust you. You need to be worthy of the assignment. You need to be trustworthy. And so, Mr. Engineer, let's go back now to everybody, to reading all 10 verses of Proverbs chapter 3 today, so that we can go over these ask Solomon again. So we're going to ask Solomon, how do I have a great life? How do I have a great life? I don't want to be a movie star or an athlete, or maybe you do, I don't know. But Lord, Solomon, you're a wise man. 2 women came to you And one said that the dead baby belonged to the one woman and the live baby belonged to her, and they were arguing. And they asked you a question. You said, split the baby in half. And the real mother gave up the baby to the woman with the dead baby. Then Solomon took the baby, the live baby, from the bad woman and gave it to the good woman. So you want to ask Solomon, you really do you? I mean, am I just talking here today, or are you really interested in a step up in your life improvement? And you're never too old. So you would ask Solomon in a general way, how do I have a better life? The first thing he's going to say to you is, my son, forget not my law. Don't forget the law. And that means you need to know the Old Testament, the book of Deuteronomy, the book of Exodus, the book of Leviticus. We don't need to know those, every verse, every jot and every tittle. It would be good if you did. If you're going to be bar mitzvahed in the Jewish faith, you'd have to know all of that. But as for you, basically, what Solomon is saying is don't throw the law of God away. And there's several laws that are paramount that will launch you. One is the law of the Sabbath. It's Saturday. It ain't Sunday, homeboy. It ain't Sunday. I don't care what that preacher said. It ain't Sunday. I don't care what the Pope over there and Bergoglio over there in Rome at the Vatican said. It ain't Sunday. It's Saturday. And you need to keep Saturday holy. All right? That's first place. If you don't plan to do that, then everything else, you can forget about everything else. But beyond that, there is the matter of there's only two genders. There's only two genders that God created, and that's full stop. There is no LGBTQ. That is a work of the devil. You sit there. Well, I'm not a homosexual myself, but I just believe people ought to be able to live and choose who they love. What a measly what a worm you are. What? Well, I'm not a homosexual and I don't go down that road, but I think if other people want to, what a despicable individual you are. Talking about you don't do it. Well, why don't you do it? If you think it's so grand, why don't you do it? If you think everybody ought to be able to do it, if you think it's so grand, why don't you do it? You don't do it because you don't think it's grand, but you're too much of a weasel to say that you disagree with it. God disagrees with it. Male and female created in them. That's it. Dave Chappelle did Saturday Night Live. When was this? Last week, is that right? Saturday Night Live, Dave Chappelle. You have to take your hat off to him in this regard, because Dave Chappelle been out there telling these people that this homosexual stuff ain't going there. He ain't for it. And Kevin Hart either. So those two comedians, Kevin Hart and Dave Chappelle, Dave Chappelle, listen, you can talk this transvestite, all this stuff. He said, listen, every person born on planet Earth had to come out of a woman, not a man. End of story. And man, the homosexual jumped on him like, why don't they tried to get him fired? And they did cancel a couple of his engagement, but he didn't back down. But here you go, right? Here you go. So you're sitting up in the Methodist church, right? You're sitting up in the Pentecostal church, the Baptist church. Well, I'm not a homosexual. I don't do that. But I think if people are able to love who they want to love, what a weasel you are. It's wrong. Okay, all right. So that's law number 2. Law number 3 is the law of the first fruit. That is to say, everything that's in Genesis chapter 1 and 2 is the first fruit. The first fruit tree, the first pear tree, the first grapevine, the first watermelon vine, right? The first apple tree. The first fruit belongs to God. And that means at the beginning of the year, the Jewish people would give their first increase to the Lord. The entire paycheck for the year, for the beginning of the year belongs to the Lord. And then the fourth one is that of laws that you should keep that are just general is the law of the tithe. And just think about this, how if you say, well, you don't have to do that anymore. Why don't you have to do it anymore? You only have to do it, you only don't have to do it anymore if you don't care about being poor, being cursed, being outside of the will of God and being untrustworthy. I'm going to put this out on the air, put this out on blast. I think it needs to be put out here on blast, and I think all the students need to hear it, the teachers need to hear it, and they need to discuss it. We're going to take our resume now that the COVID seemed to be assuaging, COVID-19 seemed to be assuaging a bit. We're going to take our students to Rome next year on a traveling classroom. We're going back to traveling classroom, and our first stop will be Rome, Italy. And so I said to the students and to the teachers, I said, now listen, if you don't come to church, and if you don't tithe, I'm not going to take you on that trip. And no excuses. Because and some of the children, some of the young people, they get $1 or $2 here, and we're going to pay for the trip. We're paying all expenses, right? And some of our older students have jobs, right? They do. But listen to this. And y'all spread this around. Let's say for a person is working, that's a member of the church, and want to go on the school trip to Rome next year, but when they get a tithe, they don't give 10% to the Lord. They steal from the church. They steal from God. God says when you don't tithe, you rob him. And you're stealing from the church. And think about it that way. You're stealing from the church, yet you want the church to pay for take you on a trip that you couldn't afford on your own. And then if you don't attend worship, yet you want to go on an extraordinary trip to Rome, a trip of your life, but you don't want to make any sacrifices to make sure that you're always in. And you have to think about that, because people don't always think about they don't think about the consequences of what they're doing. When you don't tithe, you're robbing the church, and yet you want the church to take you someplace and pay for something for you. Just the very idea that you would steal from the church. You would steal the tithe, the money that belongs you get a paycheck, 10% of that paycheck, that tithe that belongs to the Lord. So y'all spread that around. I think it's important that, because, sometimes people just don't think clearly at all, or they think in a satanic way. Here you are. Pastor can't trust you. If I find that you're stealing from the church, I can't trust you. I can't trust you. And if you're stealing from God, he can't trust you either. He's not going to give you an assignment. He's not going to give you an assignment. All right, okay, so here. So ask Solomon. All right, Mr. Engineer, let's go back let's just take a break. I think we probably need to take a breather right there, because that, you want God to trust you, and you want Pastor Manning to trust you. You want me to trust you, right? And I need to know that there's not a spirit about you, so I can give you a big assignment, right? And then God needs to know that about you so he can give you an assignment. All right, let's go to Lord. Heavenly Father, today we're asking Solomon, we're asking David's son how to lead a great life. And okay, all right. Let's forget about the break, Mr. Engineer. Amen. Mr. Engineer, bring up verse 9 of Proverbs chapter 3. 9 and 10 is what I want to look at. Bring it up. So Solomon says, honor the Lord with thy substance and with the first fruits of all thine increase. So your first fruit offering, right, belongs to the Lord. And you did honor him. Don't dishonor God. Don't dishonor God by stealing from him or not giving him what God wants. The first fruit. It's his. Honor him. Honor the Lord with thy substance. Don't honor the Lord with, the fact that you just show up in churches. Honor him with what you have. Honor the Lord with your possessions. Honor the Lord with your substance. And with the first fruit of all thine increase. Honor. Don't let the Lord find out that you are a thief, that you're crooked. that you're a backstabber, that you're sneaky, that you steal from him. Come on now. Come on. If you want to have a prosperous life, a blessed life, if you want the Lord to trust you, honor him. Honor the Lord. And if you want, I'm not the Lord, sure enough, they ain't that. But if you want me to trust you, then you got to honor me. You got to call me Honorable Manning. I read a letter this past Saturday from Elder Salem. You know what he calls me? Your Honor. He don't just call me Honorable Manning. He says, every time he sees me, he says, Your Honor, Your Honor, Your Honor. You ever notice him? If you want to get somewhere in this world, you got to honor the Lord. And I would say that I think I'm worthy of honor, but let's stay with the Lord for the time being. Don't dishonor the Lord by not rendering to him the things that are due unto him. This is so important. And God says, if you will honor the Lord, so shall thy barns be filled with plenty, and thy presses shall burst out with new wine. But let's go back for just a moment to this trip to Rome, right? To this trip to Rome. Here's what has happened. I'll just say this, I think it's important. I've dealt with a lot of students, obviously over the years, 27 years, a lot of students. We've gone on a lot of trips. We've been to Rome 3 times, Paris, London, South Korea, China twice. We've been several places. And we've taken some students who did not honor me. And ultimately, the devil gave them an opportunity to fully dishonor me, and they bid it hook, line, and sinker. And they're no longer attached to the ministry. They're no longer attached to the world. Their lives are floating around in the sewer tank because they dishonored me. And then they developed the spirit of, well, I'm not going to honor. I'm not going to really give the tithe. I'm not going to worship, and I'm not going to always be reverent and responsible to the ministry when nobody's watching me. And then the devil gave them an opportunity to really suck it to me. And they took it. The devil gave them an opportunity to really be dishonorable. And they took it. And they took it. And now their lives are pretty much over with. There's nothing left for them. Nothing at all. So you have to, brothers and sisters, you got to wake up. You don't dishonor the Lord and then expect. If you ask Solomon, he'll tell you to honor the Lord. All right, I'm going to come right back. I'm going to give y'all a little bit of breathing room, let y'all hear a little bit about our Bethelite Marketplace, and I'm coming right back. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back. I promise you I will.
It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. So what does that mean? It's time to purchase your Christmas gifts from BetheliteMarketplace.org, where we have fine china, beautiful glassware, unique dishes and vases, musical instruments, jewelry that is sure to make you dazzle, wonderful apparel, and so much more. So, hurry today and place your order and enjoy a 50% off for a limited time. 'Tis the season to purchase your gifts from Bethelite Marketplace. Call 877-777-0734 and place your order today.
I received multiple healings as I joined in with this great ATLAH vision. And one is when I was a young girl, I injured my back. And the injury over the years became worse and worse and worse. And to the point where I had to take painkillers. So the doctors put me on narcotics, they're opioids today. But the pain was so bad for me. My quality of life was not really good. I had the time where how far I could walk, and long story short, I couldn't walk too far without stopping. And so one of the Vicodin is what they gave me was not enough for the pain, and 2 was too much. So I ended up just taking 1.5. And that went on for years. And to add insult to the injury, I worked for Amtrak for years, and I worked on board, which means I was always on the tracks, moving around, lifting heavy items. And so it just added insult to the injury. And so, and this went on, but I did whisper a prayer to the Lord. And I said, Lord, these pills are going to ruin my body if I keep taking them. And so I just took them until, actually they didn't work anymore. And so when I came here to ATLAH, Pastor Manning came to the pulpit one day, and he said that the Lord said to him to serve the Holy Eucharist and to serve it every worship instead of once a month. I believe that's what it was. And so he did, and so we took the Holy Eucharist, and that was, I'm going to say about 15 years ago, and yeah, I'm healed. I've not had back problems from that day to this, or the day that I was healed.
And as of right now, you are a dangerous man. You've got a master's degree in theology and truth. And it's not to say that they had it all figured out, but you have a master's degree in truth. They want you silent. If they can do it one way, get you diabetes, get you cancer, and get you to die off.
You think they'd try that?
Pardon?
You think they would try injecting me with cancer or diabetes or something of that nature?
Well, that's eventually how they want you to fall off. They don't want to get caught pulling too many bodies out of a certain area at one time. That's why they're setting up the generation gaps so one generation can't communicate with the other.
All right, so ask Solomon how to have a great life. Ask Solomon. Ask Solomon. So Proverbs chapter 3, and we're on Ask Solomon part 2 of this on our 35th day of asking Solomon. Solomon says, honor the Lord. Honor him. Don't steal. Don't take from God. Honor him. And if the first fruit is the first paycheck of the year, and some of y'all get paid, twice a month, so therefore the you don't want to. You don't have to give the entire, you only give half of that. You don't have to give the entire. So it's the first week's pay, unless you just want to give the whole paycheck. But the first fruit of all thine increase, and that begins, and that's, when you do that, you honor the Lord. Now listen to this. This is the Bible. It's God's word. And it's, the first fruit is a principle that is germane with Genesis itself. The first fruit tree, the first grapevine, the first grape, the first apple, the first pineapple, the first pear, the first cherry, the first berry, the first fruit on the planet belonged to God. The first fruit on the planet that God planted belonged to him. It is a principle of creation itself. And every year, you're supposed to follow that principle as a celebration. Celebrate creation and celebrate the first fruits of creation. Every Saturday, you celebrate the Sabbath, the seventh day, not Sunday. Every Saturday, you celebrate the seventh day, not Sunday. You celebrate that because it is aligned with creation itself. That's why you celebrate. You celebrate that. And when you do those things, you honor God. When you don't do them, you dishonor him. So ask Solomon. So I'm going to go back now to the question number 1 is how can we have a complete and a prosperous life? Ask Solomon. And if we go back to verse number 1 of Proverbs chapter 3, we go back to verse number 1, it says, my son, forget not my law. If you want to have a prosperous life, if you want to have a great life, forget not my law, but let your heart keep my commandments. And here's what's happened. Here's what will happen. You'll have a length of days and long life, and peace shall they add to you. My son, let not mercy and truth forsake thee. Bind them about thy neck, write them upon the table of thine heart. My son, so shall thou find favor and good understanding in the sight of God and man. My son, trust in the Lord with all thine heart. Now here is the area, there's several questions. How to have a great life, how to focus on having a great life, and then how to become a great leader. And that's what's needed here. In the ATLAH ministry, we need great leaders, and we need men who are great leaders. But you can't be a great leader unless you submit yourself to a strong leader. You know, you have to be able to submit yourself. You go into the Army, they have a drill sergeant that will take you through the coal mine to get that leadership out of you. And if you are just too rebellious, too weak, think the drill sergeant is mean or hard or indifferent, you're not going to make it through boot camp. So with most young men and old men as well, when it comes to me, because I'm a strong leader, they don't even make it through boot camp. And it isn't, the thing of it is that they're just inbred weak. They're just weak men, and especially Hamite men, they've been told all their lives that somebody else is your problem. White man done you wrong. And so they don't develop. And it takes circumstances. It takes challenging life circumstances to develop a strong man. You got to, iron sharpens iron. You don't become a great man by sitting up under some old sissified pastor. And I'm not talking about a homosexual pastor. I'm talking about one who's just old sneezy, wheezy, cross-eyed, if you will. You ain't gonna be, iron sharpens iron. You ain't gonna become a strong man sitting up in a church with a silk pastor. He ain't gonna make you strong. Iron sharpens iron. Good drill sergeants make great men. And if you don't want a strong leader, then you're not going to ever be one. And if that's the case, then God's never going to give you an assignment. If trust in the Lord means that God trusts you, I ask you a question. Can I just talk to you straight up? Can I talk to you straight up? And don't lie, because the Lord is listening. Does God trust you? Hold it. I don't mean to say that you are perfect, that you are sinless. That isn't what I mean to say. I don't mean to say that. What I mean to ask you is, do you rob God? Do you steal from God? Do you dishonor Him? Do you take things from God? And if God gives you something, let's say God gives you an assignment, will you follow through to the death? Can He trust you? Can He trust you? Can God trust you? Well, Solomon says, if you want an assignment from God, trust in the Lord with all thine heart and lean not to thine own understanding. Just trust Him. If you want an assignment from God, now I've got an assignment from God. I've got an assignment, and everybody under me have a sub-assignment. My assignment is ATLAH. My assignment is second only to the assignment that God gave to Moses. I laid that out. I've been laying it out for years. I have been assigned to develop a city called ATLAH. A lot of people think it's crazy. A lot of people think I'm supposed to be about Black Lives Matter, black president, black this, black. A lot of people think I'm supposed to be Eddie Murphy or somebody. And it probably just blows their mind. They cannot, put the dots together that that the Lord would call me to establish a nation. Had a friend of mine come visit me the other day. He was here in town for Dr. Lee Johnson. He was here in town for the homegoing service of Dr. Calvin Butts. And the first thing he said to me, that when he came, he said, "Doggone, man," he said, "I Googled ATLAH, and you put ATLAH on the map. You actually put something on the map. I can't believe that, man. You put ATLAH on the map, and it is." Probably people would never think that, that if God was going to do something like that, he'd have called Malcolm X to do that. Wouldn't call me, or call Dr. King or somebody. Wouldn't call me to do that, to build a nation for him. But here it is, ATLAH. So God's given me an assignment, and everybody who's underneath me and the Lord can trust me. I can tell you this right now. And whatever else I think a lot of other people would say, I think people recognize that I am trustworthy. The Lord knows I will not quit. I've been at this thing 31 years. I've had everything. I think the devil has done more things to me than he did to Peter. And God said, Jesus told Peter, the devil going to sift you like wheat, boy. I think the Lord, I think I think the devil has done more things to me than he did to Peter, and I have not quit. I haven't quit. The Lord knows he can trust me. I will see this mission through. I will. By the way, the foreclosure issue is something that's very important to the Lord. And I was teaching this past Sabbath about all the battles that David fought to keep the nation of Israel from being foreclosed by the Philistines and by the Assyrians being won in battle. And ultimately it was after the death of David and Solomon. But I want to say to you, one of the things that the devil is doing, that the judges are doing, the crooked lawyers, the administration, Department of Environmental Protection, falsifying records and lying, and everybody at all, Mellon Bank, everybody all ganged up against me. One of the things that they're depending on that people that are listening to me right now are not going to lift one finger to help me. They're not going to send it. What I need is money, and I need it. And they're depending on the fact that you're going to sit there week after week, month after month, and you're not going to send one dime to help me. They are banking on the foreclosing of this church on the fact that you don't have the heart. You don't have the heart to be honorable enough to step and say, I'm standing with him and I'm putting my money where my prayers are. I'm putting my money where my prayers are. If I'm praying, here's what I want to say to you. When you say, Pastor Manny, we won't pray for you, then if I'm worthy of your prayers ought to be more precious than your money. If you're going to give me your prayers, you ought to give me your money ought to be even less precious, so you wouldn't have any problem. If you don't have any problem surrendering your prayers, you shouldn't have any problem surrendering money to this mission, to this ministry, to this church. So you need to put your money where your prayers are. And the devil is depending on the fact that you ain't gonna do neither one. He knows human nature. He's a psychologist. He's a theoretical scientist. He's a theoretical physicist. The devil is a theoretical scientist. He's betting on the fact that you ain't gonna do nothing to help me. You ain't gonna do nothing to help this mission. You ain't gonna do nothing to save this church. You ain't gonna put your money where your prayers are. The devil's he knows humanity. The devil's a great psychologist. He is an awesome psychologist. He's a theoretical physicist in terms of that. He knows humanity. He knows human nature. And he knows you ain't gonna put your money where your prayers are. Yet you say, Pastor Manny, we're praying for you, but you ain't sent one dime. And your money ought to be less precious than your prayers. If your prayers, if you believe they are precious and sacred, if you believe your prayers are precious and sacred, I'm talking about, if I say I'm going to pray for you, I sure enough wouldn't have any problem giving you money. In a circumstances where they're going to foreclose and shut down a prophecy, shut down a vision, shut down a ministry, shut down a high school, a kindergarten, a grade school, shut down a children's breakfast program, shut down a homeless shelter, and you haven't sent anything at all to help, not one red cent. Not one red cent. But you just say, I'll pray for you, but I ain't going to give you no money. The devil knows that. He understands you church people. He got y'all. Because he knows if y'all ever decide to put your money where your prayers are, then it's all over with them. I'll be shutting down the Mellon Bank. but he knows the psychology. He knows that. But he also knows the moment you decide to put your money where your prayers are and start sending funding to help this ministry, dropping all your judgments. And the other thing is that God will in turn bless you. He'll cause your barns to burst open with plenty. All right, so ask Solomon. Ask Solomon, should I put my money, everybody who said, Pastor Benny, we're praying for you, ask Solomon, should I put my money where my prayers are? Is my money more I can give him my prayers, but I can't give him my money. Ask Solomon, ask Solomon, ask Solomon, ask him. But here, the thing that's important beyond that is that, can the Lord trust you? Would you want an assignment from God? I mean, he'll give you one. I mean, he will give you one. And many of you, his assignment he's given to you is to come and sit at my feet. Humble yourself. You know, don't be bringing me all that old Obama stuff, that Trumpism and MAGAism and Black Lives Matterism and all that LGBTQ plus. Don't be dragging that dog in this house. Don't be dragging that stuff, that cat in here. Come and sit at the pastor man's feet and listen to what he has to say. That's your assignment. That is your assignment. That's one assignment. And then the Lord will raise you up and give you, later on, he'll make you the head of the ATLAH banking system. You know, he'll make you the head of the ATLAH Development Corporation, make you head of we already got somebody who's, head of the education department, but you got to first submit yourself to the process. All right, so it's this Ask Solomon, this Proverbs chapter 3. I've been studying it for 16 years. You know that, right? And it's been such a blessing, been such a mighty, mighty, mighty blessing to have gone over this over the years too. And I'm so thankful that the Lord has given me all these subject matters. It's allowed me the freedom to teach. I love this. I love it. I tell you the truth, I do love it so very, very much. To have this great honor. So ask Solomon, number one. Ask Solomon how to focus on living, how to have a great and a prosperous life. Number one, how to focus on the most important things or the best things in life. All right? Ask Solomon. And then the other thing with respect to increasing your productivity by 20%, maybe you might want to slow down and say, rather than doing 5 or 6 things at 20%, let me just focus on one thing and see if I can improve my lifestyle 20% just on one thing. Amen? I think that's a great place to start. Because if you can get 20% out of just one thing in your life, if you can grow by 20% of today from where you were last year this time, that's dynamite if you can do that. And I pray that you can. And then you want to focus on leadership. The world needs leaders. The world needs leaders and wimps. And I just don't know how some of y'all sit up in the church with old weak, wimpy pastor, clowning around. I don't know how y'all do that. I just, and I don't know how some of you women can get in bed with old weak, wimpy men. I don't know how you do that. How do you sleep with that man? How do you do that? My God. Weak, wimpy. Anyway, boy, sound like I was saying something else. That is not what I meant. That is not what I was talking about. I was just talking about in spirit and in character and leadership. You're getting older and older and older and ain't never done nothing. Throw a brick at something. Do something, even if it's wrong. Make a mistake. Do something, man. Good God. Okay, so leadership. How to get an assignment. Well, the Lord's got to trust you. God's got to trust you. Don't steal. Don't make excuses. Don't make excuses about when you're not in church. Be strong enough to get here anyway. You want to go to Rome? Then you need to be strong. I don't want to take weak people to Rome. And I'm not here trying to beat anybody down. I'm just teaching. I don't want to take weak people or people who I can't trust to Rome. I don't want to do that. If I can't trust you with that tithe, if you ain't strong enough to get here, then what's the point of my investing all that time and energy in you? Praise Almighty God.